Hello friends, welcome back to the channel, or if you are new here, welcome. I knew this week was going to be a bit chaotic right before Christmas, right before we let out for Christmas break, so I planned a bunch of meals that I knew I could make in a rush. I knew I could make ahead of time and let cook all day, so that is what we're going to get into today. We are going to start today's video off with these Italian beef sandwiches. Italian beef can be made a bunch of different ways. I've seen so many different recipes, and you can also do it in a crock pot, which was actually my intention when I had bought all the stuff for it, was to put it in the crock pot and have it go low and slow all day. However, life got crazy. We ended up spending a lot of time homeschooling this day, and I just did not have the time to put it together in the crock pot ahead of time. I did, however, think to do this around lunchtime, so I do have several hours for it to go in the oven. I just wanted to sear it a little bit beforehand because I really like the flavor that adds. So I have it in my Dutch oven. I'm searing it on both sides. I just did some easy salt and pepper because I will be putting in some like Italian seasoning and stuff like that. So I'm not going crazy with seasoning at this point. Once I have it seared on both sides, I'm going to take it off the burner, take it off the heat, and I'll put in the rest of the ingredients before I put it in the oven. I will have the ingredients listed down below for much of today's recipes, so if you're looking for any of today's recipes, you can find them in the description box down below. So I did buy a couple packages of this au jus gravy mix. However, I was a little unsure about the amount of liquid I wanted to put in because I wanted it to make more of a gravy, and because I wasn't cooking it in the crock pot, I was worried about it being too much liquid. So I started with less. I started with 1 packet of the au jus gravy and then half the amount of the liquid. I put in some beef broth. And then I just figured if I wanted more after it cooked a little bit, I could add it in later. So start slow and then just add in, especially if you're doing it like me, which is somewhat in a rush because yes, I'm putting this in about 6 hours in advance, but usually in the crock pot you want more liquid, and this I was a little unsure. So that is how it turned out, and then I shredded it up. I put in the other packet of the au jus, and then this is how it turned out. I love mine with some diced pepperoncinis. I shredded some cheese to go on top of it, and then I always like to include a little bowl of the gravy on the side. My kids love dipping their sandwiches in the gravy. If you saw my previous video, I did include little snippets of this pasta that I made, and honestly, this was so much better than I ever expected it to be. For much of the meals this week, a lot of them were kind of trying for the first time or variations of it for the first time. So this one is one of them. And I felt like we had something similar before, and it was fine, but it wasn't great. This one was actually really good. It was a huge surprise to me. So anyway, we had called this rotel pasta. My theme for the week was to keep things really, really simple, things that I could make ahead of time and throw together and then just put in the oven when it came time for dinner, or things that I can make really quickly right before dinner and not have to spend a bunch of time in the kitchen, because I knew things were going to be crazy this week with Christmas right around the corner and us finishing up school. We also have my son's birthday this week. It is very chaotic in my house, which I'm assuming most of our houses are like this time of year. So I wanted to keep things very simple, and this meal, along with all the rest of the meals this week, they are all very, very simple. That was the theme of the week. I have been browning a pound of ground turkey on the stove. I also have a pot of water going so I can put some pasta in there. The seasonings that I'm adding are just the normal seasonings for like a taco seasoning. So you can add taco seasoning if you want. That's actually what the recipe calls for. But I don't usually buy that. I usually just kind of mix garlic powder, onion powder, chili powder, cumin, just a variation, sometimes paprika, salt, pepper. And that makes a really good taco seasoning. So that's what I added there. I'm trying to show you a can of diced tomatoes. I added this. It is the off-brand of like a rotel, but I find that it is not as spicy. And my husband, he is prone to getting heartburn, so I try to switch things up every now and then when I can. And that one, the Walmart off-brand with the diced tomatoes with the green chilies, it tends to not be as spicy as the actual name brand rotel. So I added that in, and then I added, I can't remember the exact measurement, but I think it was about a cup of the heavy cream, and then I'm adding in the cheese. I'll stir all that together, and then once I get the pasta done, I'll mix that into a casserole dish, and I'll bake it the rest of the way in the oven. I mentioned in my last video how I was a little unsure about following my original plans for my videos for the month of December. I had originally planned to do a bunch more Christmas type theme things. Specifically, I wanted to do cookie baking. And in my last video, because we had just went out of town for a funeral, we were gone longer than we expected to be, and it kind of really threw things off. I didn't have internet and all kinds of things. So I was unsure of how I would be able to do that. And I think I've figured it out where I actually will be able to do some baking for the holidays. So plan on seeing that. I'm hoping to get that video out this coming Monday. So I'm really excited for that. That is something my daughter and I do every year. And I was really excited to hear all the baking stuff that you guys are going to be doing with your families this year. So if you did not respond and you are baking things, I would love to hear the kind of stuff that you guys bake for the holidays at your house. But anyway, if you are interested in seeing my baking video, I am hopeful that I will have that out on Monday for you. I am topping this pasta bake with more cheese because what is a casserole without more cheese? I love the bubbliness on top. I also like to broil it the last few minutes to get that nice little broiled effect over the top. It is so good and so simple. In a lot of these videos this week, I didn't end up showing the sides for whatever reason. I'm not really sure. Usually I show the sides and the vegetables and stuff that I make, but I just didn't this week. I didn't even really think about it. So this one I feel like would be really great with either a side salad or some sauteed green beans or some broccoli. And so I did do the sauteed green beans on the side, but for whatever reason I didn't end up showing that this week. I topped most of our dishes with some green onions, and I felt like that really added a nice touch to this meal. But this is how it turned out, and like I said, it was super easy but really good. For our next meal, you're really going to have to hear me out on this one. So this is something I've been making for years, and it is incredibly simple. Did anyone have pizza burgers in elementary school? Because that is something that my elementary school served regularly, and it is the most simple thing. Like this part of the video, I'm sure, is going to go really quickly, but I like to bring the pizza burger back from elementary school days, and we don't have it very often. I want to say like maybe only once a year, but it is a fun reminder from back in the day. So anyway, I usually will also make the hamburger patties outside on the grill, but again, this was just, it kind of got away from me. So I am making them inside on my cast iron, and I had already we already had some pre-made patties in our freezer, so I just used those, keeping it really simple. Told you that was the theme of this week's videos. So once I get all of the burger patties done, I put them onto a baking sheet, and then I'm going to top them with some marinara sauce, pizza sauce, whatever you want to add to it. And then usually you top it with mozzarella. However, I did not buy any this week. So I had cheddar, I topped it with cheddar, and that was just as good. You can also warm the marinara sauce up and put it on after. So I put it on before, and I put a good amount so it wasn't like dry or anything. And then I put the cheese over top, and then I'm going to put it in the oven just for a couple minutes to melt the cheese and warm up the sauce. So that is what I did. However, you can do that in a bit of a different process, a different order, but either way, it's about the same. So I put on a good amount, and then I put on the cheese. I'll melt that in the oven, and then I just put that on a bun. I like to serve ours with potato wedges or like garlic potatoes. But again, this is something that we have like once a year, and it is just so nostalgic for me in particular, because this is what my elementary school served like once a week or once every other week, and it's just a little bit of a twist on a burger. I know I used to post a bunch of videos, because we still do have it pretty often, of burger bowls. That is something that I posted for a while, and then I felt like I was kind of burning you guys out on burger bowls, so I stopped. And we also usually will have them more in the summertime, but this would be a great addition to a burger bowl if you like having those. This is also a nice meal if you're trying to clean out your freezer and just kind of use whatever you have. It has very minimal ingredients. I usually always have some type of tomato sauce on hand, so I can use that. I had the burger patties already in my freezer. If you have turkey meat or ground beef, you could use any of those, any variety, but it's a good meal to use what you have on hand first. We are moving right along to our next meal, and this is something that I'm sure you've heard of, but this is egg roll in a bowl. My family loves egg rolls in a bowl. This is like, we love egg rolls, but we actually, since moving, there are not really any good places for that kind of food. So we have learned how to make any Chinese food or egg rolls or any of that kind of stuff at home. So one of our go-tos is just egg roll in a bowl. It is so simple, and you can really mix up the things, make it how you want, and you can also make it pretty healthy by not having the egg roll wrapping around it. What is it called? I don't think it's wonton. Might just be egg roll wrapping. I'm not sure. But you can make it a lot healthier by just doing like the cabbage and stuff like that. All the fillings, you can add in different vegetables. I don't usually add in the red peppers, but I thought that would be a good touch, and I did end up liking that. So I diced some of those up, and I am going to be adding that. I have some ground turkey going on the stove now with some diced up onion. I usually use ground turkey in mine, but I know that this recipe, there is so many different variations of it, and you can use a variety of different meat. You could use vegetables if you want instead of any kind of meat. I think I've used like some type of sausage before, and I know you can add in like shrimp and stuff. These water chestnuts were also another thing that I don't usually add, but I thought of last minute, and my family loves water chestnuts. They don't really have much of a flavor, but they add a really wonderful crunch. And since you're cooking down like all the vegetables and all of the cabbage and stuff, it adds a nice crunch to the rest of the meal. So I liked adding that, and I'll continue to add that. Now I'm just adding in a variety of different seasonings, some soy sauce, a little bit of sesame oil, giving it that really good flavor that you usually find in an egg roll. This meal is usually something that I make for lunch because my kids really enjoy it, for one, and then two, it is incredibly quick to make. So most of the stuff is just cooking the meat through if you're using it, and then cooking down the vegetables. So really it's mostly just adding things in here and there, sauteing the vegetables and the meat and getting it just kind of all cooked together. But it comes together really quick and it makes a really great meal. Now, I don't usually use bouillon or water in mine, but I was looking at a couple different recipes for this, and I saw that a few of them had used that, so I wanted to give that a try. You can also use chicken broth if you have it, but I had some chicken bouillon I threw in with a little bit of water. I feel like it added a good flavor, but even though it was only a little bit of water, I felt like it added a little bit too much liquid, so I'm not really sure if I'll end up using it again. It added, like I said, a great flavor. It was just a little bit more liquid than I was wanting. So I am adding in 1 package of coleslaw mix. You can do, you can dice up your own cabbage if you're wanting. I bought 2 packages of this because I figured, I would want more for my entire family. But I ended up putting in 1 because I'm like, I don't think this is even gonna fit. And I'm glad I only put in 1 because we ended up having a little bit of leftovers, but it also would not have fit. I'm like the queen of never finding the pan that fits all the food. But this is how it turned out. We always put a little bit of sriracha and green onions over top. This, like I said, is one of our favorite meals. We've been making this for years and it's super simple. For our next meal, we're going to be doing stuffed peppers. And to be completely honest, I don't really follow a recipe for this. I really just follow my heart. I know a lot of my recipes, if you have been here a while, you know that I don't really follow a lot of recipes. I feel like they're just there for guidelines. So this is definitely one of them. I am again starting out with a pound of ground turkey. We have a ton of ground turkey in our freezer, so that is what I'm using. That's what I'm going through. I don't even know actually if we have very much beef at all. We might have to stock up on some of that, but I know we have a ton of ground turkey, and that is what I'm kind of using throughout this week. So if you're curious, that's why. But I have a pound of ground turkey going on the stove. I'm dicing up some onions to put into it. And then, like I said, this is kind of just what I was feeling. I know a lot of times there is rice in these, so I do have some, I have a pan with a little bit of oil going that I'll put some rice in and I'll steam that. And then I'll put in some like diced tomatoes. I'll put in some tomato sauce, and really I just kind of add in whatever I'm feeling at the time. I feel like that is pretty much the base of a stuffed pepper, is the ground meat of some kind. I think you can really do sausage. I don't know if I've ever done that, but I'm sure that would be really good if you do like an Italian sausage or something instead of the ground turkey, or maybe doing half and half. But basically the base is just some type of ground beef or ground meat, and then the rice and the tomato sauce. And I know that you can do a variety of different things like many of these recipes, but in my house that's kind of the base of what we do for stuffed peppers, and I just kind of add whatever we have on hand whenever I'm making it. Here I'm adding in some Italian seasoning, some garlic powder, and salt and pepper. These are the green peppers that I bought from the store. My family is not a huge green pepper fan. We like basically every kind of other pepper, but not the green ones. We do like the flavor that it adds, but we are not huge on eating green peppers. So I often will use like the red or yellow or orange, and then I will use the green when we're not going to be having them necessarily. So I know that many people eat the green peppers along with the stuffing, but my family pretty much uses it as a bowl. And there are times where like my husband and I, we will eat part of the green peppers with it, but for the most part, our kids will not. They agree that they love the flavor that it adds, but they will not eat the green pepper. So I only got 3 green peppers and I cut them in half like this. If you are a family that loves green peppers, you could get more and then cut them the other way, and that way it's kind of a bigger portion. But because we're only really using them as a bowl, I just cut 3 in half for our family of 6, and I cut them in half, took out the seeds. I did wash them, so that is what you saw me doing. And then I put them on a baking dish for when all this is ready. I can stuff them and then pop them in the oven. I do make these stuffed peppers a couple times a year. I like making them in the summer when we're growing peppers in the garden. And then I also do make an unstuffed pepper casserole. Even though it sounds kind of weird that my family does not like the green peppers, it is weird because it is one of our go-to recipes. We actually really do like stuffed peppers, just not the pepper. So I feel like that always sounds weird when I say it. But I am curious because I never know what to serve on the side with this. You'll see it in a second here. I do serve it over a bed of lettuce, and that's really only for the crunch. I don't add anything to the lettuce. I just dice up some lettuce and I put the pepper on top of it because my family only really eats the insides, and then we'll add a little bit of the lettuce with it. So it adds like a little bit of a crunch that you traditionally would probably get from the pepper. So that is why you see I have that. But other than that, I never know what to serve on the side with this. So I'm curious if you make stuffed peppers or even the unstuffed casserole, like what is something that you serve on the side to go with it? Because I never know what to do. Every single time I make it, I'm always curious, like, what is stuff that people usually serve? A lot of times I'll do like a side salad or something just because I'm pretty stumped on it. So if you make this, I'm really curious. Please let me know down below what you serve with a stuffed pepper. So you saw I mixed together the meat, and once the rice was all done, I mixed that all together, and then I'm going to add in, I did half a can of tomato sauce. It's a large can, but I did only half because I felt like it really didn't need any more. So just kind of, measure with your heart with that. Measure. If you want more, put more in. It's the same for cheese. I don't know who's measuring cheese, but I'm definitely not. So I just throw in a good amount, mix it up. If I feel like it needs more, then I'll add more. But usually I don't because I will be topping this with cheese. So I put in enough cheese, and then I'm going to stuff these pretty good, pack them into the pepper, and then I'll top them with cheese. I do cover it with foil before I add it to the oven because I want it to kind of steam that pepper a little bit, and then kind of incorporate those flavors of the pepper a little bit. But before it's done cooking, I do take the foil off, and usually I'll broil it for a couple of minutes. Here's how they turned out. I put a small dollop of sour cream over top, and that was actually a really good touch. I did like that. I don't know if I've ever done that before. And then the bed of lettuce on the bottom, like I said, for that extra crunch. we are moving on to our next meal for the week, and honestly, I have no idea what to call it. It is another one of those. We were trying this one out for the first time, and I had referred to it as a French onion casserole, but I feel like it really did not resemble that to me at all. So I don't feel like we can really call it that anymore. So I'm just going to call it, if you're wanting to reference it down below, I'll just call it a chicken casserole. I will have the recipe down below. However, you will note that I did not, of course, follow that recipe. So I wanted to use rotisserie chicken. However, I had already used the rotisserie chicken up that I had bought over the weekend. We made a variety of things. So instead, I put 2 of these leg and thigh quarters in this cast iron. I seasoned them with salt, pepper, and garlic, and then I threw them in to kind of roast in the oven while we were doing school. Then once they cooled down, I deboned them, and I'm going to dice them up in smaller pieces. I talk about this often. I do keep the bones from almost all of the meat that we have bones for in my freezer, in freezer bags. And then I also keep like celery ends and leaves and carrots and onions, basically any parts of the vegetable that you're going to throw away. I keep all that kind of stuff in my freezer, and then once I have a big gallon-sized bag full, I'll take it out and make broth for the week. So I did end up keeping the bones for that. So I diced up the chicken. I'm putting it in this casserole dish, and then I have a 1.5 cups of rice that I made on the stove. I just steamed it, and I did not put really any seasonings or anything into it, only because I knew that we were going to be seasoning it again. So while that is in the casserole dish, I am making the onions now, and this is just kind of sauteing them and caramelizing them. So that is what I'm doing here. I'm just kind of showing that it is cooking for it took about 20 minutes to caramelize them. This is heavily sped up, and if you can see, I have that dish. If you bought, when was it, my Sunday video, I think it was, I was prepping a bunch of food, and that was one of the dips that I prepped. I put that just in the fridge, and I knew I was going to cook it at another time, and that this was the night that I cooked it. We were out of our other dips, and my husband, usually he'll come home from work and he will want some kind of dip and chips. Usually it's chips and salsa, but if I have other dips on hand, he will have those instead. So anyway, that was for that. I was just waiting for him to come home and start eating that. So the onions are done. I went ahead and I put garlic on them and cooked them a little bit longer. And then I have some chicken broth going, and I used half and half. You can use heavy cream, but I didn't have any on hand, and so I just used half and half. Like I said, you will notice that the ingredients down below and the process is not what I did here. So I did not do as much half and half or as much of the chicken broth that they call for in the recipe, because I am doing it like a bake, and I did not want it to be too much of the liquid. So they had made it, they actually used pasta, and they cooked the pasta into the broth. And because I wasn't doing that and I was using rice, I didn't want to add too much liquid. So that is why you'll see the difference in that. I'm just adding in all the seasonings and everything that the recipe does call for. And then I will put it into the mixture with the rice and the chicken. And then I'll finish baking that in the oven. And of course, like I've done in all the other recipes today, is I will broil it for the last few minutes. I believe this was another recipe that called for mozzarella. I again did not have that this week, and also I tend to not like that as much in pasta dishes. it depends which ones, but I feel like it just kind of chunks up a little bit, and it's just, I don't know. So I will often use just cheddar, which is usually what I have on hand. So that is what I use tonight. And then I also use some Parmesan. So I'm melting that in and mixing it up really well. And then, like I said, I will put that into the rice casserole, mix that up really well, and then bake that the rest of the way. Can you see my little shadow that I have right there? My little dog Milo. He is always following me, and he's little, and so you don't always see him, and it bothers me when I'm in the kitchen because he is always underfoot, and I feel like I always have to kind of watch where he is. Otherwise, I'm like stepping all over him. He is always right there though, until my husband gets home, and then that is his absolute best friend, and he's not always underfoot. But anyway, this is how this casserole dish turned out. It was a really good one. Like I said, this was the first time that we made it, but it was nice to try things every now and then. So I do like to try new casserole dishes, and this one was actually super easy. So anyway, that is how it turned out, and that is all I have for you today. So thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.